I never believed in the supernatural. Ghost stories were just that, stories. That was until the car arrived. It was a crisp autumn morning when I first saw it. A sleek, black sedan parked perfectly in the lot outside my apartment complex. Nothing unusual at first glance, except for the fact that no one had seen it arrive. No engine noise, no headlights cutting through the dawn mist, just there, as if it had always been. Curiosity piqued, I asked around. None of my neighbors claimed ownership, and the building's security footage showed nothing. One frame, the lot was empty. The next, the car was there. No transition, no movement, just an inexplicable jump. Days passed, and the car remained unmoved. Yet, every morning, it appeared in a different spot, always parked with uncanny precision. Sometimes in the visitor's spot, other times in the handicap space, once even partially on the curb. No one ever saw it move, and yet it did. I began to feel uneasy. There was an aura about the car, an oppressive stillness that seemed to suck the sound out of the air around it. Birds avoided it, and even the neighborhood cats gave it a wide berth. One night, unable to sleep, I watched from my window. At exactly 3:33 a.m., the car's headlights flickered on, casting long, distorted shadows across the lot. The engine didn't start, yet the car slowly rolled backward, executing a perfect three-point turn before settling into a new spot. The lights flicked off, and silence returned. I couldn't explain what I had seen. The car moved without a driver, without an engine running. It defied logic. The next day, I reported it to the local authorities. An officer came, took notes, and attempted to run the plates. His brow furrowed as he told me the plates didn't exist in any database. He shrugged it off as a prank, but I could see the unease in his eyes. That night, the car parked directly in front of my apartment. I tried to ignore it, but sleep eluded me. At 3:33 a.m., I heard a soft humming, like a distant engine idling. I peeked through the blinds. The car's interior lights were on, illuminating an empty cabin. The driver's seat was reclined, as if someone or something had been resting there. I decided to confront it. Armed with a flashlight and a surge of adrenaline, I approached the car. The air grew colder with each step, my breath visible in the beam of my light. I reached for the handle, hesitated, then pulled. The door opened with a creak, revealing an immaculate interior. No dust, no signs of wear, pristine. I leaned in, and that's when I saw it. On the passenger seat lay a photograph. It was old, the edges frayed, the image faded. But I recognized the scene. It was my apartment complex decades ago, and standing in front of it was a man who looked eerily like me. I stumbled back, dropping the flashlight. The car's engine roared to life, headlights blinding me. I shielded my eyes, heart pounding, as the car slowly backed away, turned, and parked itself across the lot. The engine cut off. Darkness returned. I retrieved the flashlight and the photograph, retreating to my apartment. Sleep was impossible. I spent the night examining the photo, trying to make sense of it. The resemblance was uncanny, but the clothing, the hairstyle, they were from another era. The next morning, the car was gone. I thought it was over, that the nightmare had ended. But that was just the beginning. I didn't sleep well after that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I could hear the gravel shift outside my window. That sound, the low, scraping crunch of tires on loose stone, repeated like a lullaby from hell. In my dreams, I stood at the window staring at the black car, but it wasn't parked anymore. It was slowly rolling toward the house, its engine silent, headlights off. Every time I blinked in the dream, the car moved closer, the door cracked slightly open, just wide enough to suggest something inside wanted out. I started documenting everything. I took pictures of the tire marks, the car, the license plate, though each photo came out grainy, warped like something interfered with the digital image. On 2 occasions, the plate didn't even show up in the picture. Not blurred, just gone like the space where it should be was a hole in the image. I showed this to my friend Terry, who worked part-time for the town's traffic enforcement. He was the kind of guy who treated license plate numbers like baseball cards, but when I showed him the car, his usual interest turned into something else. He just stared and said, "That's not in the database. And this model, man, this thing's old. Real old. But it looks new. That doesn't make sense." Neither of us could find any record of it, not online or through DMV back channels. It was as if the car didn't officially exist. Then came the incident with the dog. One morning, I woke up to find my neighbor's golden retriever, an energetic, friendly dog named Dusty, scratching wildly in my front porch. I opened the door, and he bolted inside, whining and trembling. He wouldn't go near the window that faced the driveway. Later that day, Mrs. Green, his owner, told me that Dusty had started acting strange a few nights ago, especially around 11 p.m., barking at the air, growling toward the driveway, hackles raised. She'd assumed it was raccoons or maybe a coyote. That night, I stayed up. This time, I didn't hide behind the curtain. I sat in my living room, lights off, a bat in one hand and my phone in the other. 11:03 p.m., right on schedule, the car pulled in. I heard the crunch. I heard the soft thump as it stopped. But this time, the engine didn't shut off. It wasn't loud. It was more like a low hum, almost mechanical, but not quite. Like a breath. I don't know how else to describe it. I turned on the porch light. Nothing happened for a few seconds. Then the engine or whatever it was fell silent. The driver's side door slowly opened. Just an inch. Enough to reveal darkness inside. Not just the absence of light, actual darkness, like looking into a well that had no bottom. I didn't see anything move. I didn't hear anything, but I felt watched. Like something behind that open door had noticed me, and it wasn't happy. The next morning, there were footprints in the gravel leading from the car to the edge of my porch. Bare feet, long strides. They stopped just at the first wooden step, as though whatever it was had stood there for a while. Watching. The prints were gone by noon, like they'd never been there at all. I had never seen my father cry before. But that night, as he stood in the kitchen holding the mangled remnants of the front gate, his hands trembled and tears streaked silently down his face. He didn't say a word. He just stared at the twisted metal like it was a broken relic of something much older, something sacred that had been defiled. It was around midnight, and the wind outside was oddly still, heavy even. My mom stood behind him, her arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold her own pieces together. The whole house had taken on an almost oppressive quiet, the kind that settles when you know something terrible has happened, but no one wants to be the first to name it. That damn car. It was parked outside again, right in the same spot, perfectly aligned to the curb, as if nothing had happened. And yet, the evidence of its violence lay right there in our yard, a garden gnome decapitated. Deep tire gouges across the grass, as though it had spun in circles before stopping. The impact against the gate had left shards of red plastic and a faint trail of oil. But the car itself? Not a scratch on it. When the cops came earlier that evening, our second call in a week, they took notes, shrugged uncomfortably, and gave the same scripted response. We'll look into it. But they didn't even tow the thing. Said it wasn't reported stolen. Said their hands were tied. It wasn't until my dad asked if he could destroy it that one of the officers gave him a strange look and said, "Wouldn't recommend that." It sounded more like a warning than advice. And they left. Again, after the gate incident, my father tried to sleep downstairs in the living room, hammer in hand, like he was going to brain something if it showed up inside. My mom started keeping crosses in every room. I didn't even know we were religious. But none of it helped. The car kept coming. Not every night, but often enough to break us apart in slow motion. It would disappear in the day and return again at twilight. Sometimes it would be parked slightly closer to the house. Once it was halfway up the driveway. Each time, I was sure someone would have caught something on a doorbell camera or a traffic cam. But no footage showed it arriving. It just was. By the third week, I stopped going to school. I'd sit up in bed all night, staring through the blinds, watching, waiting, trying to catch it in the act, trying to prove I wasn't losing my mind. That's when the dreams started. They weren't the normal kind of nightmares, where you jolt awake in a sweat and whisper to yourself it was just a dream. These were different. In them, I was always standing in the middle of a dark road, completely alone, except for the sound of gravel crunching beneath tires, a distant engine purring, the hum of headlights, even though the air was pitch black. And then it would come toward me, the car, not driving, not moving, gliding, hovering just above the asphalt like it was pretending to belong here, but didn't really understand how motion worked. I'd turn to run, but my feet would be rooted. I couldn't scream, couldn't breathe, just watch. And just as it would reach me, the dream would end. But I wouldn't wake up, not right away. There would be this long moment where I was in my bed, eyes wide open, completely paralyzed. My room would be cold, so cold I could see my breath. And there would be a click at the window. Every time, the same click, like a car door unlocking. Eventually, I stopped sleeping altogether. My dad bought a crowbar. My mom lit sage. I took to writing down everything. Every detail, every pattern, every scratch I found on the outside of the house. I started noticing strange things inside the car too, things that weren't there before. The first was a crumpled parking ticket. It hadn't been there the day before, but now it sat on the dash with my name written across the top. Not the license plate, not the make or model. My name, as if I had parked it. I didn't tell my parents. They were already on edge. My father had started drinking again. My mother barely left the bedroom. It was like the house was rotting from the inside, and we were each just pretending it wasn't. And still the car came. Then the passenger window rolled down one evening while I was watching. No one was in the seat, but I swear on everything, the seat moved. Like something had adjusted it. Like someone invisible had leaned forward and rested their weight on it. I couldn't take it anymore. So that night, I went outside. I walked right up to the driver's side door, fists clenched, heart hammering against my ribs like it wanted out. I don't know what I was expecting. To see a ghost? A prankster? A dream? But the car was empty. Clean. Too clean. The seats were pristine black leather, but there were no buttons, no radio, no knobs or compartments. Just an interior stripped of all human convenience. The steering wheel didn't even look like it turned. It was static, locked in place, as though it was only there for show. I reached out, hands trembling, touched the metal. It was warm, too warm for night air. I backed away, heart pounding. I started to turn, and that's when I saw the handprint. On the rear window, pressed from the inside. Not a child's hand. Not an adult's either. Long fingers. Inhumanly long. No palm. Just the imprint of pressure where something had tried to press through. I screamed. Ran back to the house. My parents didn't believe me. Not until the next morning when we went outside and saw that the handprint was still there. Smudged like it had moved. Dragged to the side. My mom started crying. My dad called a priest. And I began to wonder, what if it wasn't the car that was haunted? What if it was us? Or worse, what if it wasn't even haunting? What if it was claiming? I had never felt more trapped in my life. Every nerve in my body screamed in protest, but I couldn't stop myself from walking deeper into the woods, drawn by that unsettling pull, the one that had been gnawing at my mind ever since I first saw the car parked in the empty driveway. It had become a constant in my life, a presence that never let me escape. I tried to rationalize it, to convince myself that it was just a trick of the mind, but every time I thought about it, the car loomed larger in my thoughts. I could hear the rustling of the leaves, the almost imperceptible sound of branches swaying in the breeze. But there was no wind. It was the same feeling I had the day the car first appeared in the driveway. It didn't make sense, but I couldn't deny that it felt wrong, like a subtle but undeniable shift in the air. The driveway seemed empty, but there was something almost alive about it. Every time I looked at the car, it felt like it was moving slightly, like it was watching me, waiting for something. I didn't dare approach it. Not yet. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I decided to take action. I couldn't just stand around anymore, waiting for something to happen. I grabbed my jacket and slipped out the back door, heading toward the woods. As I walked deeper into the trees, the quiet was oppressive. The only sound was the crunch of leaves beneath my boots, the occasional snap of twigs breaking underfoot. I kept glancing over my shoulder, the sense of being watched growing stronger with each step. I didn't know how far I'd gone, but the woods seemed endless. I had no real plan, just a growing sense of unease, like something was drawing me forward. I passed familiar landmarks, the large oak tree I had climbed as a child, the clearing where we used to have our bonfires, but everything looked different now. Darker, colder. Then out of nowhere I saw it. A car. The same model, the same color. It was parked on the side of the narrow trail I had been following, its headlights flickering in the distance. I froze in place, my heart hammering in my chest. The air around me felt thick, suffocating, as if the woods themselves were holding their breath. I didn't know how long I stood there, staring at the car. I couldn't tear my eyes away. It was as if it had been waiting for me, and I had finally come to fulfill some unspoken promise. The headlights flickered again, casting an eerie glow on the ground. For a split second, I thought I saw a figure in the driver's seat, but when I blinked, it was gone. I took a tentative step forward, my feet moving of their own accord, pulled toward the car by some invisible force. Each step felt heavier, like I was wading through thick mud, and I couldn't stop myself. I had to know what was inside, what was making it move on its own. As I approached, the air seemed to grow colder. My breath came in ragged gasps, the chill sinking deep into my bones. I reached out to touch the car, but my fingers froze just inches from the door handle. A voice whispered in my ear, so soft that I almost didn't hear it. It was a warning, a plea. Don't touch it. But it was too late. My fingers brushed against the cold metal, and a shock of electricity shot through my body. The car shuddered, the headlights flashing wildly, as if it were alive. And then, without warning, the door swung open. I don't know how I got in. One moment, I was standing outside, paralyzed by fear, and the next, I was sitting in the driver's seat, my hands gripping the steering wheel with a white-knuckled intensity. The car was idling, its engine humming softly, but everything around me felt wrong. I couldn't remember getting into the car. The last thing I recalled was standing at the door, and then nothing. I blinked, trying to shake the fog from my mind, but the car seemed to be taking control of me, guiding me forward. I looked around, my eyes scanning the area. The trees were still there, but they felt distant, like they were fading into the background. I could hear the sound of the engine grow louder, as if the car was trying to drown out all other noise. It wasn't just the engine, though. There was something else, a low hum that seemed to be coming from inside the walls of the car itself. It was almost like a heartbeat, pulsing with a steady rhythm. I gripped the wheel tighter, my breath coming in short gasps as I tried to make sense of what was happening. The headlights cast long shadows on the road ahead, but I couldn't see anything beyond the beam of light. The woods around me seemed to stretch endlessly in all directions, and I felt as though I was driving through some kind of endless, suffocating void. The car jerked suddenly, and I had to fight to keep control. I slammed my foot on the brake, but the car didn't stop. It kept moving, dragging me forward despite my attempts to fight it. The trees blurred past, and the hum grew louder, more insistent. The silence around me was suffocating, broken only by the sound of the car's engine and that low, haunting hum. The road was narrowing, twisting in ways that didn't make sense, as if the car was driving itself toward a destination I couldn't see. Then I saw it, a figure standing in the middle of the road, its back to me. The figure was tall, too tall to be human, and it was standing perfectly still, as though waiting for me. I couldn't see its face, but I knew it was watching me. I could feel its eyes on me, even though I couldn't see them. I tried to turn the wheel, but my hands wouldn't respond. The car didn't slow down. The figure didn't move. It was as if we were both caught in some kind of standoff, an eerie dance that neither one of us could break free from. The hum grew louder, a deafening roar in my ears, and the figure suddenly turned, its head snapping to the side in one fluid motion. Its face. I couldn't describe it. It wasn't human. It wasn't anything I had ever seen before. Its eyes were hollow, black pits that seemed to stare directly into my soul. And in that moment, I knew it was in control. I couldn't stop. I couldn't move. I was frozen, locked in place as the car sped toward the figure, too fast for me to even process what was happening. The figure stepped forward, its limbs twisting unnaturally, and then everything went black. When I woke up, I wasn't in the car anymore. The transition from darkness to awareness was slow, as if I had been submerged in thick fog. My head throbbed, and I could feel the pulse of pain radiating through my temples. I opened my eyes, blinking at the sudden light, my breath ragged. For a moment, I thought I was back in my bed, but the air smelled different, damp, earthy, and tinged with something metallic. I tried to move, but my body felt heavy, stiff. My muscles ached like they hadn't been used in years. I forced myself to sit up, my hands pushing against something solid beneath me. The ground was rough, uneven like stone. The texture of it was strange, almost otherworldly, as though I wasn't in the woods anymore, but somewhere else entirely. As my eyes adjusted to the dim light, I could make out the outlines of familiar objects. It was the car. The same car that had been driving me in the woods, except now, it was parked in the middle of an empty space. The forest wasn't there anymore. Instead, I was surrounded by tall, dark walls that seemed to rise endlessly into a void. There were no stars in the sky, no moon, only a darkness so deep that it felt as if it were swallowing everything around me. I struggled to stand, and my knees buckled beneath me. I caught myself just in time, but my head spun violently. As I regained my balance, the unease in my chest swelled. This wasn't the world I knew. Something about the place felt wrong. The air was thick, oppressive, and I could feel the weight of it pressing against my skin. The car, sitting eerily still, seemed to hum with an energy that I couldn't explain. The windows were fog, but I swore I saw shapes moving inside, fleeting glimpses of something or someone stirring in the shadows. But every time I tried to focus, the shapes would vanish, only to be replaced by a deep, unsettling silence. It was like the car itself had become a living, breathing entity waiting for me to do something, or maybe it was waiting for me to stop. I took a hesitant step toward the car, the sense of urgency building in my chest. Every instinct told me to turn and run, to get as far away from this place as possible. But my legs moved of their own accord, dragging me forward. I was so close now that I could feel the static energy of the car's presence vibrating in the air around me. The windows, now clearer, revealed nothing but the faintest impression of movement inside. I reached for the door handle, but before I could touch it, a voice, cold and distorted, rippled through the air as if the very ground beneath me was speaking. "Don't open it." The voice wasn't human. It was low and hollow, almost as though it came from somewhere deep within the earth itself. I froze, my heart hammering against my ribcage. It didn't sound like a warning. It sounded like a command. I jerked back, my hand shaking. The voice had been so real, so present, that I could almost feel the words reverberating inside me, rattling my bones. But there was no one around. Nothing but the silence and the shadows that stretched on forever. I looked around, desperate for any sign of escape. But the walls seemed to close in on me, pressing down, making the air feel suffocating. The trees that had once surrounded the car were gone, replaced by a vast emptiness that seemed to stretch into eternity. My thoughts became frantic as I tried to make sense of it all. How had I gotten here? What was happening to me? And then I saw it, a figure standing near the car, almost blending into the shadows. It was tall, impossibly tall, and its shape was distorted, like a silhouette carved from smoke. The figure wasn't moving, but its presence filled the space with an overwhelming sense of dread. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My mouth was dry, my throat too tight to speak. My limbs felt like lead, frozen in place. The figure stepped forward, its movements jerky, unnatural, like a puppet on strings. And in that moment, I realized it wasn't a person. It wasn't anything human. It was the thing that had been controlling the car. The thing that had been driving me, pulling me deeper into this place. Its hollow eyes met mine, empty and black, and I knew, without a doubt, that I had made a terrible mistake. There was no escaping it now. The figure's presence enveloped me, and I felt as if the very air around me was being sucked away. My vision blurred, and I staggered back, gasping for breath, but no matter how much I tried, I couldn't escape this suffocating atmosphere. The thing in front of me wasn't human. It was something much older, something far more malevolent. As it moved closer, the shadows seemed to twist around it, bending and warping in ways that defied logic. The walls of the space closed in tighter, and I could feel the ground beneath my feet shifting, as though the entire world was folding in on itself. It was as if time itself had stopped, or worse, had become completely irrelevant. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The figure reached out with a long, skeletal hand, its fingers twisting unnaturally. It touched the car, and the vehicle, my vehicle, shuddered violently. The hum grew louder, and the headlights blinked to life, flickering in a disturbing pattern. The low, mechanical hum turned into a growl, as though the car was growling back at the figure, reacting to its touch. My heart raced, and I stumbled back, my legs giving out beneath me. I fell to my knees, my eyes locked on the figure as it continued to move toward me, its twisted shape growing more defined with each step. The air thickened, and the hum of the car filled my ears, drowning out everything else. It was deafening, relentless. The figure stopped just in front of me, towering over me like a shadow cast from the darkest corner of hell. I could feel its presence pressing down on me, suffocating me with its very existence. The empty, soulless eyes of the figure stared into mine, and for the first time, I understood what it meant to feel utterly, completely insignificant. "You shouldn't have come here," the voice rasped. It was the same voice I had heard before, the one that had warned me not to open the car door. But this time, it wasn't just a warning. It was a promise. A dark, twisted promise of things to come. Suddenly, the ground beneath me gave way, and I fell, plummeting into the darkness below. The sensation of falling was both physical and mental, as if the world around me was collapsing in on itself. The shadows reached for me, pulling me deeper, and I felt my mind unraveling. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, everything stopped. I was back at the edge of the woods. The car was gone, and the night air was thick with the scent of damp earth. The forest stood still, quiet, as if nothing had happened at all. I stood there, shaking, my chest heaving with fear. But when I turned around, I saw it, a figure in the distance, watching me from the edge of the woods. Its hollow eyes followed my every movement. I didn't know what it wanted, but I knew I couldn't escape. The car would come for me again. The figure in the distance didn't move, but its presence was undeniable. I couldn't tear my eyes away from it. Every fiber of my being screamed for me to run, to escape. But the fear, that oppressive weight, rooted me to the spot. I had no strength left, no will to resist. Every step I took seemed futile, like I was walking in place, stuck in an endless loop. The forest was silent once again, but the silence was different now. It felt suffocating, as if the woods themselves were holding their breath, waiting for something. Waiting for me. The shadows seemed to stretch toward me, like fingers reaching out from the depths, clawing at the edges of my mind. I could almost hear whispers in the wind, faint murmurs that slipped through the trees, but when I tried to listen, they vanished, leaving only the hollow emptiness behind. I turned around, desperate to find something, anything, to pull me away from this nightmare. But the road was gone. The familiar path I had followed here was nothing more than a faint memory, slipping through my mind like sand in the wind. The only thing that remained was the endless stretch of trees, the feeling of being surrounded by something far worse than the woods themselves. Something ancient and hungry. I took a hesitant step forward, my legs trembling, unsure if I was truly walking or if I was simply lost in the haze of fear and confusion. The figure in the distance was still watching me, its black eyes unblinking, unwavering. Its shape seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy, like it was drawing strength from the very air around it. I couldn't help but feel drawn to it. A terrible compulsion tugged at me, urging me forward. The closer I got, the more I realized how small and insignificant I was in the face of this thing. It wasn't human. It wasn't even alive in the way I understood life. It was something older, something that had existed long before the trees and long after everything would be gone. A voice echoed through my mind, cold and guttural, sending a shiver of dread through me. You don't belong here. It wasn't the voice I had heard before. It wasn't the figure's voice. It was something else, something deeper, more primal. And it was coming from everywhere, inside my mind, the air, the earth. I couldn't escape it. I tried to scream, to call for help, but my mouth was dry, my throat closed tight, as if the very act of speaking would betray me. I staggered forward, desperate to escape the grasp of whatever force was pulling me closer. But with each step, the figure grew larger, its form more solid. Its presence pressed against my chest like a weight, suffocating me. The air around me grew heavier, and I could feel the ground beneath my feet shifting again, warping, like the very world was bending to the will of the figure before me. It was too late. I had crossed the line. There was no going back. The figure stepped forward, moving with an unnatural grace, its long arms stretching toward me. I wanted to run, to fight, to do anything, but my body refused to cooperate. My legs refused to move. I stood there, frozen, unable to do anything but stare into those hollow eyes that seemed to pierce through my very soul. You should have never opened the door. It whispered, its voice echoing in my skull. I wanted to scream. I wanted to beg for mercy, for forgiveness, for anything that might end this torment. But no words came. The ground beneath me cracked, splitting open like a chasm, pulling me down into the void. The figure loomed over me, its form shifting and warping, its eyes widening, and in the depth of its gaze, I could see the endless abyss, a dark, infinite expanse of emptiness where nothing had ever existed and where nothing ever would. The car, the figure, the woods. It was all connected. It was all part of something much greater than I could comprehend. And then I fell. The earth swallowed me whole, and everything went black. Somewhere deep in the woods, far from the roads and the homes, there is a spot where the trees stand silent and still. If you listen closely, you might hear the faint hum of a car's engine, always just out of reach, never quite visible. It comes and goes, moving through the forest with no driver behind the wheel. And when it stops, when it parks itself in the clearing, there is always something watching. No one knows what happens to those who encounter the car. Some say they vanish, lost to the darkness that lingers in the trees. Others claim they hear strange laughter echoing from the woods late at night. But no one is brave enough to search for the truth. And if you happen to find yourself wandering down that forgotten road, lost and unsure of where you're going, beware. The car will come for you. And once it does, you'll never be able to escape.